You there, Nick?
I'm here. Yeah.
Triangle BNI is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Oak City Tech powers your goals with proven technologies for increasing traffic, leads, and sales. They can design your website, they can help you promote it, they can do anything you need to help you grow your business. Go to oakcitytech.com. I know they'll be able to help you. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Manning. Welcome back to Triangle BNI, where we bring you a small business success story every week. If you're not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Our little slice of heaven here in the Triangle is Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. Every week, almost 40 chapters and nearly 600 members get together. The only thing we do is help each other grow our businesses. Today's guest is Nick Pione, owner of Trek CBD. Nick, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show.
Glad to have you here. Nick is part of RD39. He knows it better as Business Connections. They meet Friday mornings at 8 a.m. at the Wake Forest Coffee Company. Nick, you're not the newest in the group. I think you're
No,
third newest, maybe. But so how's it going so far?
it's going great. I kind of look back on how things happen kind of just by chance. And, we had just opened up our store, Trek CBD, in December of 2019. And not shortly afterwards, a great individual that you know really well came into my life. And it was Mike. It was Mike Davis.
Yep.
And he walked in and he was just asking us questions about our store and asked really good questions, but then started getting into BNI. And I co-founded Trek CBD with my business partner, Scott Brady. And Scott was familiar with BNI, but I was not. I didn't come from that type of background where BNI would have been relevant to me. I said, it sounds good to me. Scott knew a lot more about it than I did. And we checked it out the next day, I think. It was a Thursday. And we asked Mike Davis, can we come tomorrow and check it out at the Wake Forest Coffee Company? And he graciously said yes. We got into the room. We felt the energy. We felt the camaraderie. And we said, you know what? In this community, we want to be a part of this. And that was about, 4 or 5 months ago.
And
So
your store is located at 1968 South Main Street in Wake Forest.
it is.
What has COVID-19, what kind of impact has that had on you since about early March?
Yeah, early March. So March was a phenomenal month for us. So again, opened up in December. We had our grand opening on March 7th. And if you kind of picture our store sits on Main Street, great traffic out there. We have some great partners in the plaza like Synergy Color Bar, Wake Forest Jewelers, Advanced Primary Care. And we did a huge grand opening celebration on March 7th because we were purposely waiting for the weather to turn in Raleigh. You and I know that the weather's great here, right? But January and February can be a little tricky. And we have this great patio outside of our store. So we just envisioned from day one bringing community together and having a big event. And that was what we did. We had the blood connection there, collecting blood donations. We had Lone Rider Brewing Company out there pouring free beer samples. We had a DJ out there. We had a food truck out there. It was great. March 7th, phenomenal day. And wouldn't you know, like a month later, or no, a week, I'm sorry, a month, I shouldn't say a month. About a week later was when COVID really started to heat up. And Scott and I looked at each other and we weren't sure at first what was going to be happening with all this. We were still seeing, decent traffic volume in the store, but we all know, the media kind of picked up speed and that rock rolling downhill was picking up speed. So the long and the short of it is, we saw customers, stay at home. And as soon as the stay at home order hit in April, we closed the store down for about a day and a half. We were trying to figure out with the county whether we were essential. It wasn't that we were trying to figure it out. We believed we were essential, but we just had to prove our case to the county, and they were awesome in working with us. And we were, like I said, closed for about a day and a half, and then we won the appeal and got able to be back open. But things did change. It did change a lot for
And I
us.
think you mentioned that, was it GNC that kind of ran the gauntlet for you?
They did, originally, so the category that we're in, CBD, right, hemp-based products, it's an emerging category, and a lot of people don't understand it, right? On one end, people think that you're some kind of a smoke shop, and we're not. On the other end, people recognize us for what we are. We are a true supplement store to supplement people's health, and that's the appeal that we made to the county, was around people come to us and rely on us for really probably three primary reasons. They're trying to reduce their anxiety, they're trying to treat their inflammation or pain, either one. Sometimes they're both. And then they're trying to sleep better. And we all know that, with COVID, none of those things got any better. So as soon as we made our case to the county around that, there's a therapeutic need here. We did use the precedent of GNC as well to say, you know what, that supports our argument as well too. And again, I can't say enough about, I know the tough decisions that the county has to make in times like that, but the fact that they were able to hear us out and hear our appeal and won the appeal was fantastic.
Many of the small businesses during COVID-19 have had to pivot somewhat.
Yeah.
What kind of pivots in store and online have you and Scott had to make?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, Mike, and I think of it as two different things, right? How did our business pivot, and how did we pivot within the community? So our business pivoted, as you would imagine, right? We essentially, put all the hand sanitizer out that we could. We cleaned the store religiously a couple times a day. We offered curbside pickup. We did local deliveries, which we weren't doing before. And from almost day one, we've had free shipping across the country, so that didn't change at all. But we wanted to make it as easy for the customer as possible. So we did that like any business would, right? In that position, any retail business. But the big thing was we pivoted immediately from a company standpoint, and we said, you know what, we're not in this alone. And we looked around and we said, there's a lot of our friends that own businesses that are hurting right now, pizza places, restaurants and whatnot, that were open and struggling to kind of get the word out that they're still there. So we immediately did things right away, like, hey, we ran a contest. We're a member of the Wake Forest Chamber of Commerce, and they put out a list of 40 restaurants that were doing takeout or delivery options. And we said, hey, you know what? If you will visit all these restaurants, doesn't matter how much you spend, but just visit all these restaurants, and you come to us, basically, we'll put you in a raffle for a $250 gift card. We started shouting out probably more local businesses because, again, it wasn't something new for us. It's a part of our DNA as community, as you heard from our grand opening, bringing people together, but we just wanted to do more of it. We did more listening than ever. We, I think all of our social media ended with, if you just want to talk, if you need help, just call us, please. Message us on Instagram, message us on Facebook, whatever it is, we're here for you.
CBD, I know, invokes all kinds of thoughts and passions. I'm sure you either hear, I love this stuff, I've been using it for a while, I can prove that it works. I know you've heard, oh, another pot store. When did pot come to Wake Forest? But it's somewhere in the middle. So let's start kind of unpacking some of the myths
Yeah.
of what you guys are up against.
Sure, sure. I think if you take a step back, right? What is basically CBD? Well, CBD is one of the 113 different what's called cannabinoids or compounds found in the hemp plant. Okay, CBD is the most prominent cannabinoid, but there's a lot of cannabinoids in the hemp plant that they're doing a lot of research on right now. But there's also another cannabinoid called THC, which everyone is probably more familiar with. And not judging here on the podcast if you tried THC, if you knew what I was talking about or not, right? But at the end of the day, it's probably the most well-known, right? Because it's the one that gets you high. So if you take a step back even more from that, we're in the cannabis family. When I was in high school, I thought I was being cool when I referred to marijuana as cannabis. And I was about half right. I thought it was like really cool. Like, oh, we're gonna cannabis, right? It's half right. Because in the cannabis family, there's the marijuana plant and there's the hemp plant. They both have CBD, but only one is predominantly THC, and that's the marijuana plant. But to your point, we're probably most confused with that and saying, is this product going to get me high? And there's nothing in our store that can absolutely get you high. And not all of our products have THC. That's the other misconception. So when we thought about that and we took a step back and we said, okay, so we got kind of two customer groups that sit outside of our windows. And the customer groups that we call them are the ones that are curious, the ones that are like, you know what, I've heard about CBD. If you've Googled it, I read a statistic that it was Googled more than Kanye West in 2019. That's a lot, right? It's a lot. So it's out there. It's a buzzword. It's appearing everywhere in stores and whatnot. So people are really curious about it. And about 25% of the population has tried it. But the rest, or what you're drawing on, is what they're confused. Like they want to be interested in it, but they don't want to do anything illegal. And we dispel that myth, right? They want to know if it's safe because like any supplement, the science is emerging, right? FDA is doing guidance right now, but it's still an emerging field, right? So they have all that curiosity and confusion kind of built into one. And that's what we built our store around. We built our store around three basic common principles. And the first is to address these, it's education. So if you come into our store, you will walk out better educated on CBD. The second one is quality. Everything in our store is third-party laboratory tested, so it's safe, it's free of impurities, it has the potency that it says on the label. And the last one's a simple one, is that it's about value. What's going on right now is called the green rush, where everyone's trying to capitalize on CBD and they're charging some outrageous prices. And we're not in that. We're not in that. We work with the top manufacturers, and we want to make sure that we can provide you the highest quality product, but at a value. That's important to us.
We've known each other for a little bit. I'm like most everybody else, CBD, you hear
Yeah.
that and you make judgments, everything. But since you guys joined the chapter, which I'm uh, full disclosure here, I'm the consulting director for
Yeah.
Next Chapter.
Mhm.
And ever since we met and talked just briefly, but I got to learn each time I visit, you guys stand up and talk about what you do to understand the difference.
Mhm.
And I've been doing a lot of studying up the last week or so since I knew you're coming on the show. I would in the stuff I read, it was the focus, the anxiety, the sleep, and the pain, and I get all that. What I wasn't prepared to read was that CBD and THC can sometimes slow disease progressions,
Yeah.
and that's all new to me.
And it's new to everything, Mike. So that what you just kind of nailed at the beginning is important, right? Because if you think about, I just read a paper by Harvard Health Letter. So who knew that Harvard Health Letter 10 years ago would be talking about cannabis, right? But they talked about cannabis, meaning marijuana and CBD, in the same paper, in the same white paper, basically. And what it basically talked about was you've got basically two things right now. You've got some research that is still needs more, but there is really good evidence that it will do those things that you mentioned before. Then there's the, well, we think what it can do, but more research needs to be done. Doesn't mean that it can't be, but more research needs to be done. That's the world that I came from. I came from a career in pharmaceuticals for the past 20 years. So I'm very comfortable in this space, right? But I also understand that from a consumer standpoint, it can be confusing to say, well, why isn't there more research on this? Why isn't it happening faster and whatnot? And that's when you get into the economics and the demand of it all. But it's an exciting place to be. It's what drew me from that career to this career, because once I got into pharmaceuticals 20 years ago, I was addicted, and I mean addicted from day one, on what our products could do for patients and the stories I would hear. That just drew me in and said, this is the career I want to do for what I thought at the time was the rest of my life. But what do you know in your 20s, right? But at the end of the day, that's what drew me in. And it's the same reason that drew me here, is that there's a body of evidence, it's growing. But when a customer comes into our store and tells us, this is what your product did for me, I get the same chills and I get the same, passion of why I get up every day and do what I do every single day.
I think a couple words scare the non-curious, and that's hemp, first of all. And I've heard that before, so I know you can make clothes out of that, but only stoners wear it. It's got a bad connotation. But the word that freaks people out that we haven't dissected is cannabis
Yes.
or cannabinoid. Is that the correct word? And
No.
we just hear that and
Yep.
we think, oh, well, that's a marijuana plant,
They're
and
both
not even close.
They're both right, right?
Yeah.
Because cannabis is the family of plants that it's in, right? And like I said, you get two. I don't know what we want to call them, sisters, brothers, but marijuana and hemp, they're like kind of the sisters and brothers that, I don't know. One's kind of jealous of the other in certain ways, because one kind of looks at the other and says, "Wow, you get people really high and really stoned, right?" And the other says, "Well, you get a really high CBD content," meaning the hemp one, and said, "You do a lot of good for people, right?" Without getting all those side effects of THC. Because if you've ever, again, not judging, but if you've ever tried the THC marijuana, right, you know that you will get all the benefits of CBD. There's no doubt you will get relief from anxiety very quickly. You will get relief from pain very quickly. All those things, right? Because that's the CBD that's in the marijuana plant as well. But what you will also get potentially are THC side effects, paranoia, right? Things like that, that for some people are just not acceptable. And I can understand that and appreciate that. That's why with hemp, you get all those benefits for relieving pain, anxiety, and sleep with no psychoactive effect whatsoever. Nothing at all. And that's why hemp is to put a finer point on it, that's why hemp was made legal in all 50 states in 2018 by the US Farm Bill. So it's 100% legal, where marijuana still is a pretty divisive issue. If you live in a state like Colorado where it's legal, it's legal. If not, don't take it out of the state, because you will face the power of the federal government.
I know in the sports world, marijuana is a pretty prevalent discussion for pain for the NFL players.
Yep.
I believe there's either enough study now or just about enough coming out that proves, shows, confirms, whatever word you want to use, that would help them more than getting on all the painkillers that we hear stories about, athletes and people in general getting hooked on. And this, they're saying, Yeah, I'm sure they enjoy smoking it, I guess. But I know I've heard enough people that legitimate people that I trust and believe is like, yeah, it kind of really does help pain.
In the same thing, and CBD is in that category as well. So they're opening that up as well too for sports as well. But I think, Mike, what you said is critical in the fact that, my 20 years in pharma, I lived through the opioid epidemic. I never sold opioids. It wasn't part of our company's mission, but I saw people turn to a pharmaceutical and say, you know what, this is 100% safe because it's approved by the FDA, right? It's 100% safe. And we found out that it was one of the biggest crises our country has ever faced, is the opioid crisis. I mean, just unfortunately reduced thousands of lives, right? Hundreds of thousands of lives. And so I think in the sports world, the same thing happened. They said, well, wait a minute. I'm getting fined or I'm getting suspended for smoking something that's natural. Yet, if I go to my trainer, you'll hand me a fistful of pills that are potentially addictive, okay, and could put me and my family and my playing career in harm. So that's part of how we, meaning Scott and I, came to be. In terms of, we look at Trek CBD. Trek, the name itself, is about a journey. Trek is a journey, right? And our brand is about a journey to wellness. And we recognize that there's a lot of people that were on my path before. They've only done the pharmaceutical route their whole life. We also recognize there's a lot of people that are on the natural path. They turned years ago to organic foods, vitamins, supplements. They are probably already, they're the ones that are trying CBD, but it doesn't matter where you are. We know, and we saw the rising demand over the past 10 plus years for people wanting a more natural solution. And probably, unfortunately, that was probably driven by the opioid epidemic, that people said, you know what? There's a lot of good things that pharmaceuticals do, but there's a lot of good things that nature does. And we're going to pick which one's best for us.
Who or what group is the best advocate for CBD right now?
There's a lot of advocacy groups out there for CBD right now. The big manufacturers, there's about 5 big manufacturers that are probably charging the way. The biggest one, people might know the name, is called Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web was founded by a group of brothers, actually, and it gets its name from a little girl who unfortunately just passed away. But she had a pediatric seizure disorder. And it's one of those stories where if you research it, it'll blow your mind. I mean, parents of children that have up to 500,000 seizures a month. I'm not kidding. Like, their day is just riddled with seizures. So these kids back in the early 80s and early 90s and whatnot, there was nothing medicinal that could help them anymore. Nothing pharmaceutical, I should say, more directly. But they started experimenting way before any of this was legal with cannabis and cannabis oils and whatnot, and found out that it was helping reduce the seizures. So the big manufacturers like Charlotte's Web are paving the way. I think more so than ever, and you would kind of think this is weird, is that the federal government is paving the way. We've never had more sentiment in Congress for legalization of cannabis in general, right? So again, hemp is already federally legal, but in terms of the entire category, federal legalization, consumer demand. As I referenced before, I read an interesting piece of literature the other day that said the growing demand in this category is 65 plus. And that just doesn't include CBD, right? The legal product. It's also the other product too, right? Behind there, because again, people are looking for a more natural solution. So I would say right now, Mike, it's those two things really right now. It's the advocacy of the big manufacturers, but then it's also, I would be lying if I said we don't take a part in it every single day where we're actually changing it from the ground up, but we know we're not probably having the biggest impact at the end of the day.
Last month I turned 59, so those joints are starting to, I'm starting to feel those. But I messed up my back. We're going on probably 15 years or so.
Okay.
And when I first messed it up, it's muscular. So it just seizes up on me and there's nothing I can do till that loosens up. And I'm telling you, I know how people can get addicted to those high-end painkillers. I thankfully didn't.
Yep.
But boy, did those work quick and they make you feel good.
There's no doubt about that. It's very effective. It's just there's a risk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the products in your store, let's dispel another myth.
Yeah.
There's nothing to smoke coming out of your store, right?
There is something to smoke coming out.
Okay. All right. But most of them are pills, liquid
Yep.
form. Okay.
So if you think about what we sell, right, probably the biggest product that we sell is an oil. Okay. We sell an oil and let's see if I have one in my bag. Actually, I do. So it looks like this, right? So this is what's called a tincture. And if someone was coming in and they were saying, listen, I'm struggling from anxiety, they would take a dropper of this and put it under their tongue. Why they put it under their tongue is because it gets absorbed by your capillaries there, goes into your blood system, avoids digestion. You get more of it in your bloodstream, more therapeutically. That's what we sell the most of, because people, that's a maintenance type of product for somebody. If somebody was situationally stressed out, like I only get stressed out every once in a while, or strangely enough, we've heard stories where they come in and say, this Zoom thing is totally uncomfortable. And you know what's uncomfortable to me about the Zoom meeting? There's always one person out there who doesn't put their camera on. And I'm
Oh,
afraid that what they're doing is they're talking about me the whole time or making weird expressions. And we're like, okay, we get it, right? We get it. It's a new world, but it's also not going away. So for somebody like that, they might do an edible like a gummy, or we have some chocolate or things like that, or even a capsule where they would just take it before their Zoom meeting and they would be fine. But then the next 7 days, they're fine. We have topical pain relievers. So those are our three big top categories, where it's the tincture, it's the edibles, and it's the topical pain relievers. Now we do have a smokable product. We just want to be 100% transparent. It's probably the smallest part of our business, because we're not advocating for anyone to be smoking, but at the same time, it is the quickest way to get CBD into your system. And for those that prefer that route of administration, we have that for them. Again, no psychoactive effect whatsoever for them.
would
So,
that tincture help for people that have trouble flying?
exactly. So if you have any type, the tincture is probably the second fastest way to get into your system, essentially, because you're going right into your capillaries there. So yeah, if you took a dropper of this 30 minutes before you flew, and by the way, this is 100% TSA approved. All CBD products are TSA approved on that. So if you were to take that, you would immediately feel a sense of calm and help with that as well too.
Can you overtake that?
In what way?
Can you put too many drops in your mouth?
Well, sure. It's like anything else, right? I mean, if you were to take, and I mean, there have been studies on this, if you were to take upwards of, this is about 25 milligrams a dropper, so that's 25 milligrams a day. But there have been studies where if you're going to take obscene amounts, and I mean like over 1,000 milligrams a day, you could have GI upset in your stomach. You could have a sedating effect at that point. So yeah, I mean, there is, like anything in life, too much can be too good of a thing, where we're much more on the advocates of starting low and going slow. And it is a little bit of a find your own way, because unlike a pharmaceutical, you can't walk into our store and we can say, per body weight, this is what you need. We're going to start you off low and slow, because that's the right thing to do. And like anything else, whether it's a pharmaceutical or CBD, you have to be consistent with it if you want it to have effect. If you're treating it for pain, you have to take it twice a day. And after about 30 days, then it's time to evaluate whether, my pain feels good, but I think it could be better. Then maybe it's time to go up in milligrams. But again, low and slow is the way to go for everything.
Okay. So if you're getting ready to fly on Friday,
Yep.
or go to a doctor's on Friday, which causes major anxiety,
Yep.
how long before that do you have to start taking this tincture for it to kind of get in the system,
Yeah.
and your system says, you know what, we like this stuff, it's working?
Yep. So I wouldn't do it on the first time, right? I would do it at another time, right? Like anything else, you never want to do something before. I used to run races, and it's like, try something new on a race, because you don't want GI upset for 15 miles, right? The same thing here. You don't want to be in a 6-hour flight, which I've been before, trapped in the middle seat, right? With your stomach doing circles, right? But to answer your question though, it's a little bit hard to answer because everyone's metabolism is different, right? But generally, well, for a tincture, it's 15 to 30 minutes. For something that's edible, and let's say you're in the airport, it might be more discreet to do an edible at that point,
Yeah.
because you don't want to pull out an oil and be trying to put it under your tongue, and people are gonna be, what is the matter with that guy, right? So an edible will be 30 to 60 minutes, because then it does have to go into your stomach, and it does have to be digested, goes through your liver, et cetera, et cetera. So it takes a little bit longer, but it'll also last a little bit longer too. So good option for a flight as well. And we have some delicious tasting edible options for anybody that's in that situation.
We are here with Nick Pione, owner of Trek CBD Oil. They are located 1968 South Main Street in Wake Forest. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. You'll go to oakcitytech.com, tell them what you're looking for. They can help you with website design, SEO, emails, anything you want. And they are working on some new products and new deliveries for social media that I know will help you. So when you go to oakcity.com, tell Drago we said hi. All right, Nick, I'm always fascinated the family's role in a small business ownership.
Yeah.
So let's start with your wife. And I always ask people,
Yep.
How'd you meet? And you both tell the story the same way.
We do tell the story the same way, as a matter of fact. So my first career in life was restaurants. So when I was 14, I was like, you know what? I want to make money. I don't want to rely on my parents for money. I want to make money. So for anybody that's probably under the age of 30, this reference is not going to make any sense to you, but I did not want to do a paper route. So just to expound upon that, back in the day, young kids used to deliver papers to the doorstep every single day. It's a newspaper, by the way. And I didn't want to do that. You had to get up super early for that, and it just wasn't my passion. So where do you go to work when you're probably going to be working under the table at 14? Is you go to a restaurant, right? And I got involved in restaurants. They gave me a job. I was incredibly thankful, but I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the intensity of it. I loved the creativity of it, creating food and whatnot. And I did that all in all for about 10 years, meaning I went to culinary school and got a degree in culinary arts and management. I came out of college and then went to work for Hyatt Hotels, where I was in their leadership development program. I was on track to run a hotel for them. And thank God, because that's where I met my wife, at the Hyatt Regency in Greenwich, Connecticut. And she was working at the front desk. So she was that smiling face that always checked you into the hotel. And I remember walking in one day as a trainee, and they was working through every single position of the hotel. And I was working in the bell stand, the people that take the luggage upstairs. And I looked over at the front desk and I saw her and I stopped. And I looked at her and I was like, wow, this is it. I got to be cool, of course. I'm a 20-something-year-old kid, whatever. I got to be cool about it. But I'm like, I remember saying to myself, I'm like, this is somebody I want to get to know. And I worked there for 3 years, and our relationship continued to grow. And on about the third year, this is Connecticut. This is the middle 90s. There was 21 snowstorms in Connecticut. I didn't leave the hotel for 3 weeks. My car was buried under snow because we had to be there to serve the guests. And my parents had just started kind of their pilgrimage to Florida. It was going to be like a vacation thing at first, then it became retirement. I'm like, you know what, honey, we're not married yet. We have no kids. Miami Beach is calling us. And we started our family in Florida. We lived there for almost 15 years. It's where I started a career in pharmaceuticals with GlaxoSmithKline. And then we, after 18 years of that, we started Trek CBD. And the goal from day one has always been for it to be a family business, myself and my business partner, Scott. So Scott's wife, Shannon, and my wife, Katie, the plan from day one was to work in the business. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, my wife has had to step into the homeschool teacher role. And I give her credit every single day because it's a role I probably couldn't do, and she's done it brilliantly. And it's delayed her entry into the business. She and Shannon did probably the biggest thing for the business. They designed the store. So if you ever come into the store, they designed it from the get-go, but they've only been able to work there probably not as much as they would like to. But the plan now moving forward is to have all of us on board, as we're looking for right now our second location. So
Where was going back to the snowstorms in Connecticut, and I applaud you for moving out of said snowstorms. Where was the first date with Katie?
the first date with Katie, I believe it was actually, we went out to dinner, and I can't remember the restaurant's name. It was an Italian restaurant. We loved it there. And it's missing my mind right now. I don't know what it is, but I can remember it brilliantly because I remember two things. I remember the time that we had dinner together, but I also remember the time that I kind of got the courage to ask her to leave Connecticut and come with me to Florida. I mean, I wasn't asking her to marry me, so I kind of felt it was odd, you know what I mean? And she was leaving everything that she knew. My parents were going to be there. She barely knew my parents. But I remember those two events vividly. I can't remember the restaurant name, but I can tell you exactly where we were driving in the car, and we was on like an off ramp. We were coming off an off ramp off 95 in Connecticut. And I remember asking her, like, hey, I think I'm going to go to Florida with my parents, but really don't want to do it without you. Is that something you would do with me? I'm like, this is obviously before my sales career. I'm horrible at this. I was like tripping over my words and whatnot. And she was like, yeah, I'm all in. And I'm like, from that day on, if I already did know that this was it for me, but that was just like, all right, if she's going to follow me to Florida, then you know what? This is it. I mean, this is the woman for me.
The first time you looked over and saw her and you realized, okay, I want to ask her out. What kind of game did you have back then, Annie?
Mike, what kind of game did I have back then?
Yeah,
Well, of course, I was a 22-year-old kid. My game was phenomenal.
No,
I mean,
no,
come on.
not perceived game, actual game, because a lot of us thought we had game and we didn't.
You know what? I mean, I don't know. I think she says I had better game than I thought because I was like one of four in the entire country, corporate management trainees. And it was a big deal that Greenwich was getting one of these, oddities, right, to come and work in the hotel for 7 months. And so she probably thought I had game more than anything else. But I kind of, my dad made me a really humble person. I mean, and so I had confidence, but not cockiness, in other words. So I had confidence. I hadn't had it all worked out yet, but my game, I bet, was pretty horrible. I'm guessing. I mean, like I said, I kind of tripped over my words a bunch back then because I was just so enamored. I mean, I remember it was like people talk about like a lightning bolt thing, and that's so like cliche, right? But I'm like, I do remember like just stopping, and it was like from here to there, and I'm just looking over it, and I'm like, I'm just like this. I'm getting barraged by dozens of employees who want to meet me at this hotel, and I'm like, this is the one I want to get to know. Like, I just remember so vividly saying, I didn't know where I was going to go at this point, but I'm like, this is the one I want to get to know. And then I had to figure out how I was going to do that in a perceived suave way, which probably was horrible. Right.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. When I saw my wife, I had the same thought, and we're coming up on 34 years, so there is hope. But I know what she was wearing. I
Yep.
know she was 3 levels up at the restaurant we were sitting at.
Yep.
We had never met, and I watched her walk all the way down. It's like, oh, good, she's coming to the group I'm with.
Yeah.
But I know those moments, and I'm a firm believer of love at first sight.
Couldn't agree with you more. And we just passed 20 years. So,
Yeah.
which means that she's put up with me for 20 years. So thank you, Katie. I love you, baby. Okay.
So you get to Florida where you go to Johnson and Wales.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was looking at the notable alums of Johnson and Wales, and the first 10 were chefs, so I just moved on.
Yeah.
I knew it's like Emerald and
Emerald.
Graham Elliott, and I'm like, okay, I think I know. I think I've seen this movie before.
There's a lot of alumni, and actually I actually went to school in Providence with them. Actually, so Florida, I was out of the restaurant industry at that point. I loved Johnson and Wales. I actually taught for the university for 2 years as a teaching assistant and fellowship, and that's where I kind of got my passion for coaching and leadership. Was really in that role. Leadership with limited authority, leadership in terms of helping people kind of accomplish what was best for them, not what was best for me, essentially in that aspect. And yeah, when I moved to Florida, I was kind of a ship without a rudder. I'm like, hey, this was a great idea. We moved to Florida, but I've known restaurants for 10 years now. What am I going to do? Right? What am I going to do? I mean, so at that point, it kind of made sense that, I loved people. I didn't really stay much on the chef side of things. I was always a people leader. I finished up my work at the Hyatt as the assistant director of restaurant operations. I ran 4 restaurants for them and a bunch of employees. And that's what I loved. I love people. So I said, you know what? We're going to make the sales thing work. I don't know how we're going to make it work, but we're going to make it work. And all I know is I like people, and I'm going to figure out the rest. And the rest is, man, I've had some good mentors in my life. People that really taught me how to do what I do today. Starting off with my grandmother that taught me how to cook, to my mom, who was an amazing, amazing, strong businesswoman who taught me how to be an entrepreneur, to my dad, who taught me how to be a man. But all those people kind of, it's really hard to talk about, but just kind of made me who I am today, but also just gave me the most important gift that anybody can give them, which is just the belief that you can do whatever you want in life. And I think my resume has proven that, but I don't think I would be able to have done any of that if I didn't have 2 loving parents that said, just do whatever you want to do that you're passionate about, but just do it well, do it with integrity, do it with hard work. The rest you can learn, but if you maintain those 2 things, you'll be successful. And I'm blessed.
Do you cook much for the family?
Well, yeah. So I love to cook. I love to cook on holidays. I love to cook big meals. My wife is also a phenomenal cook, and she probably does more to the day-to-day because I'm in the store right now. But any chance I do get, I love to cook. Yeah.
So let's go back to your statement. You got to Florida. You didn't kind of know what you were going to do. You didn't share that with Katie in the car on that off ramp at that point in time, did you?
No, I think that was probably where I touched the line of cockiness, right? From confidence to cockiness to be like, oh, I've got it all figured out. Don't worry about it. We're going to go to Florida. Florida's like the land of opportunity. No, I'd only been there for like Orlando, right? I mean, I'd only been to to visit Disney World. But I'm like, you know what? This is going to work for us. It's that confidence that just says, my parents have taught me that, you can do whatever you want. Just do it well. And I think that's, I didn't convey it to her because she probably would have said, stop the car. I mean, stop the car. I'm going to get out. Go to Florida. When you figure it out, call me back. But she's an amazing woman. I mean, she has incredible belief in me. And honestly, I don't think, Mike, I think that pales in comparison to when I left GSK about a year and a half ago. I did some interviewing for a while and determined that it's all the same. I want to do something different, and came back home with 3 kids, okay, in a house and a mortgage and all that kind of stuff, right? Healthcare, and said, we have an idea for Trek CBD. Hear me out, and I want you with me on this journey. Number one, but I think we can be wildly successful at this because of what we've done in our life. That to me was probably shows that her amazing ability to believe in me, I'm a blessed person because of that, but also to be able to take risk with me, which is, you have a partner with somebody who wants to risk with you, not when it's easy, but when it's hard.
Yep.
You know?
And I always enjoy talking to other small business owners to see their career arc.
Yeah.
And you have a unique one. You go from hotels, which is a hard life,
Yeah.
to Glaxo, to owning a CBD store on
Yep.
Main Street in Wake Forest, North Carolina.
Yep.
You generally don't see those three connected there, Nick.
You don't, you know what? But again, I think you and I share something very similar, Mike, and it kind of goes back to the name of this podcast, right? Wired to Change, right? And the thing that you and I'm pretty confident we share after talking to you a bunch is that we're curious individuals, right? So I like learning new things. I like the fact that at 14, I had no idea about restaurants, but I kind of thrived in that industry, kind of went to, at the time, where I could have, the highest I could have gone, right? I like the fact that I went into sales and figured that out in a highly technical field like pharmaceuticals. And within that, got to work in areas that I was totally uncomfortable with, like operations, strategic planning, marketing. I mean, before that, I was a sales guy and a restaurant guy. What do I know about marketing, right? To the point of the last job I had with them, I was leading a large team out in California. So leading sales, I knew. Leading people, especially leading leaders at the time I was leading leaders, was going to be new to me. But the market couldn't be more new to me, more different to me, because I was leading a team that California is probably one of the most unique markets in the world, right? 7th largest economy in the world, right? Number 1 in population, and it's just a different culture than a guy that came from the East Coast, right? And get to be successful in that because of the people I worked with. It was all about them, and that's what they helped me become successful. But I can tell that goes back to the curiosity, meaning just like you said about going to Florida. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to figure it out. When we got to this place about Trek CBD, we said, we know what it can be. The rest, we're going to figure it out along the way, but we're going to continuously be curious and become better every single day. And I think in 6 months we have, honestly.
And I'm just intrigued by you living here in the Triangle and flying to California each week.
Yep.
To do that. First of all, just the travel wear and tear,
Yeah.
because that's not an easy flight nor a quick flight.
Right.
But that the company allowed you to stay here
Yeah.
and commute.
Well, it is, and I'm very thankful to them for doing that to me, because I mean, my family is East Coast. Everybody I know, my family's here. At the time when I took that job about 4 years ago, my dad was just about to enter a nursing home, and it's family first for me. I mean, bottom line, I would be lying if I said I haven't made sacrifices in my career, because I have, right? I've made sacrifices where, if you think about work-life balance, it's never balanced, right? You spend more time at work than you do at home. But I've always made the conscious decision that when I'm at work, I'm at work, I'm at home. So if what I need to do to provide for my family is the opportunities in California, I'll do that. And I had that discussion with my company, but I'm not moving, because I'd already moved once actually twice, I should say, sorry, for the company. And I didn't want to do it again. My daughter was going to be going into high school and whatnot. I'm like, I just won't do that. So if you'll be flexible with me, I'll be flexible with you. And as you can kind of tell, I never suffer from a lack of energy. And the commute never bothered me. I mean, I won't lie to you. There were days when you leave Raleigh at 6 a.m., you hit the ground. I remember working with one of my best managers. His name is Rajiv Malhotra in Fresno, California. We'd hit the ground. And by the time I got done working with him and his team, it was a 23-hour day for me by the time I got up and finished. But it never bothered me, because I loved what I was doing. And if I love what I'm doing, I will put 110% in it. And I will also give 110% at home too. So
I'm impressed that you decided not to move a teenage daughter in her high school years to another state. So kudos to you.
thank yeah, it was easy. It wasn't that hard actually. I love her to death, and
Yeah.
she's a kid, and I will never put anything above my family.
My wife is an Air Force brat. So
Oh,
going into her senior year of high school in San Antonio, her dad got rotated to Germany.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And she made her mother's life miserable for a few months. But no, literally nothing she could have done because the Air Force said, "Hey, you're going to Germany now." So,
What are you gonna do, right? I mean, and I've learned one lesson in my life is that kids are incredibly resilient. So I could have made that move to California. They would have been fine, right? Some would argue it would have enriched them a lot. You know what I mean? Living in a different culture, but it just wasn't the right decision at the right time for us. So
I like the mix of working from home now with Zoom.
yeah.
How often do you get into the store?
I'm at the store pretty much when COVID hit. Scott and I have always been in the store together, but when COVID hit, we kind of divided and conquered. Like I said, we're looking at our second store location. We've been really active in terms of increasing our marketing presence on social media, and looking at new product acquisition as well. So it's allowed us to kind of flip flop with each other, basically. So it's kind of one day in the store, one day working at home, which is nice from a balance standpoint, and it's great for the business because we're getting more done than we've ever gotten done before, right? And it's still able to maintain the volume in the store. It's actually at the point now where we have to both be back in the store, and we're hiring employees right now because the volume is just picking right back up to where it was. But it's been a nice little kind of balance between the two right there.
So what room are you in the house right now?
So I'm in the bonus room of our house. So when we bought this home, going back 8 years ago, we had two children. So our little one wasn't on the way yet. And this was supposed to be my man cave because we had a third floor that was finished, and that was going to be the kids' playroom. And this was going to be like an office slash man cave for me. And well, through the grace of God, basically, our third one came along and we needed another bedroom. So my oldest moved into what she calls the penthouse, which is the third floor. The
Oh,
bonus room became the office slash, let me see if I can do this without destroying everything, Barbie's Playhouse, right? So there you go, Barbie's Playhouse, right? So it became all of that. And you know what? You're flexible, right? I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything, right? You'll see double doors to right behind me here, where my 7-year-old often just barges in when I'm on a Zoom call, and we're like, "Hey, I'm here!" You know, it's kind of like Kramer back on Seinfeld. Just pushes the door open and comes in, and I love it. I mean, I love having them close to me. But I love Zoom. I mean, I think it's a great way to stay connected with people and see the expression of people's faces versus the tone of their voice.
well,
Yeah,
your oldest daughter cut a shrewd deal getting an entire floor. She might be sales material, right?
she definitely is. As a matter of fact, a friend of hers just gave her for her birthday, her 17th birthday, a fridge, like a dorm fridge kind of a deal. And I'm like, we may never see her again, ever. I mean, if she puts a lift outside of the window for Uber Eats to kind of pull food up, we may never see her again. You know, so we'll see.
If I walk into your house tomorrow, will I know what you do for a living?
You'll know because you'll see CBD products probably on the counter, right? I mean, I'm a huge believer in CBD in terms of I'm 48 years old, soon to be 49. Um, all those things we talked about with previous jobs were great, but I was the guy in his 20s and 30s that said, and I used to do this, I can drink a pot of coffee on the way home at night and go right to sleep. Well, into my 40s, the sleep fairy came along and said, that's not going to work for you anymore. And I can't tell you how many nights I would either have a hard time getting to sleep, or something would wake me up in the middle of the night, a storm or something, and I couldn't get back to sleep to save my life. Because then my mind would be like, oh, did you enjoy those 2 hours of sleep? Because now it's go time. Let's think about the P&L or whatever it is you want to think about, right? So when I first started this business, started testing CBD products, it changed my life. Helped me get to sleep. When I wake up in the middle of the night, it helps me get right back to sleep. So you'll see CBD products everywhere. You will also see a passion for food and wine everywhere. You'll see the wine fridge. You'll see plenty of cooking implements everywhere because we are who we are, right?
Will I see any memorabilia or logos from any of your beloved Boston teams?
Right behind us on the wall right here. Yeah, Carlton Fisk is right behind me right now. Yeah, I mean, it's all here. I mean, you can't grow up, and for everybody that just tuned out of the podcast because they just found out that I'm from New England, right? I just want to put an asterisk on that by saying that, you know what? Again, I'm 40, almost 9 years old. Growing up, everything but the Celtics, right? We were still living with the curse of the Bambino. The Patriots were horrible, underscore, underscore. So I'm a true fan. I went through the hard years. I'm enjoying the time now and know that I'm enjoying it while it lasts. But you'll see that all across my house. You'll see, Patriots, Boston Red Sox. It's in my DNA. Yeah.
People have no idea how bad the Patriots were before Belichick got there.
Yeah. Try to explain
Horrible.
that. Try to explain that to a 17-year-old who only knows, AFC championship, division championship, Super Bowls. I'm like, you don't understand. This doesn't happen, right? And this is nothing like my childhood. My childhood was misery. 86 World Series, right? Things like that. I mean, just horrible. Playing the Bears in the Super Bowl. Well, that was a joke. I mean, so yeah, I mean, it's great to see a winning team, but it's also great to see whether you love them or hate them, it doesn't matter, right? I'm obviously a fan. I love them to death, right? But I mean, to see a coach like Belichick that has such high standards for his team, not an easy guy to work for, from what I've heard, but holds you to a really high regard.
And from a business standpoint, I'm a big fan. I'm a Tennessee grad, so I can't really like Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a big fan of Nick Saban and Bill Belichick for that reason. There's in the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA,
Yeah.
their systems they put in place
Yeah.
to be consistently competitive and a contender every year is to drool about for small business owners who aren't even in sports.
Yeah, Nick Saban doesn't joke around, and he's not saying something for the cameras because we know he's kind of like Belichick, where he doesn't love the media, right? When they've just won the national championship, right? And he'll turn to the cameras and say, "Well, it's time to start thinking about next year." He's dead serious. I mean, and I respect that because I know the discipline it takes behind that to actually be that focused and to find something, but I also can appreciate the fact that when you're passionate about something, that's all you want to do. You just got to make sure it doesn't consume you, right? That's the whole thing, right? But I mean, I get the passion behind it. I really do.
With your kids being the age they are, what kind of conversations do you have with them about CBD and hemp and marijuana and kind of the world you're in now?
Yeah. So it's been great, right? I mean, my little one kind of runs around just talking about Trek CBD, and she doesn't really understand any of it, right? I mean, she's just like, "Hey, Trek CBD," she sees the shirts and everything, and it's great. But my middle two were really curious when we went into this business, and to the point where I'll preface this with a story, right? Where I called up a friend of mine that I hadn't talked to in a while. She's an amazing person. Her name is Lakshmi Natarajan, and we had worked together for years at GSK, been colleagues, partners, and whatnot. And she turned to me and she said, "So what are you doing now?" And I'm like, "We hadn't touched base in probably like 6 months." And I'm like, "Well, I just opened up a CBD store." She's like, "Oh, that's awesome. I just really didn't think you were that cool." And I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "I get it, right?" I'm a stiff corporate guy, right? That's what I did my whole life. And I'm like, I would be the last person you would think about with that would open a CBD store. If you meet my partner, Scott Brady, he's the epitome of cool. He's a cool guy, right? He's cool. I'm not, right? So when we brought it to our kids, I think my 16-year-old at the time said, "This is really cool." And I didn't expect that reaction necessarily, but she was just like enamored with the cool factor of it. My son, he's 14, he was like, "Okay, sounds good. Can I get back to my Xbox now?" But he's been really interested in the business as well. But I think they see that the fact that what I want them to see, I should say, um, and this is really near and dear to my heart, is that my previous job to them was foreign to them. I worked in California once a week. One of my daughter's girlfriends asked her, "Well, like, what does your dad do?" Right? And she said, "I think he's a sales rep for the company." And I'm like, "Honey, it's close. I'm a few levels up from there, but it's close, right?" I'm like, "It's close. You got it. At least you got the kind of field I'm in, the sales part of it. You got that." But I want them to see what it takes to build a business. I want them to see not only the good things, but the challenges, right? The rewards and the risks. I want them to see that. So it really is something that is probably the biggest thing that drives me every day, is that I want them to be able to experience this. I don't want it to become their dream because I don't expect that. But I do want them to see what it takes in life to put yourself out there on the edge. And anybody who's watching this as an entrepreneur, my hat's off to you, because I think I knew what that meant, but now I'm living it, right? There's no paycheck coming in every single week, right? There's no health insurance coming in every single week. There's no 401k. You basically go out there and create whatever it is that you're going to own. And I want them to see that, right? I really want them to see that. And I will pass on to them the same, and I have passed on to them the same thing my parents did to me. Just, I believe in you. You can do whatever it is you want to do, but just do it well and do it with integrity. Right.
I call small business ownership stressful freedom
Yeah.
because it's both of those each and every day. With you being part of the community, both as the Pione family and Trek CBD, take kind of, let's look at two hats. Are you having different conversations with your daughter's friends' parents about this subject because you're in it now? Are they more curious because they know you and all of a sudden you're doing this?
We've been fortunate that a lot of them have become customers, but they walk in the door the same way in terms of that curious but confused kind of way. They kind of look around. Um, and anybody who's listening, if you just want to come check our store out, it's different, right? It's a little bit different. It is very much set up around the educational component of what's needed here. We have a seating area where you can come sit down and either read a publication about CBD, or we can just sit there and talk about it whatsoever. You can try all the products up front. But yeah, they are, Mike. They're curious, right? And probably is the more you kind of get to talk to a few of them, like over a beer, I'm talking about in particularly, where it's the vino e veritas, right? The truth in wine comes out to be like, why are you doing this? And then you get to tell them, it's not that, right? We're not a recreational store. We don't sell something that's recreational, right? Even if somebody wants to come in and buy the smokable product, it's not recreational, it's therapeutic. And I can speak from the heart about what we talked about before about, listen, pharmaceutical is a phenomenal industry, right? I mean, if you needed something that I was selling before, the products that we sold helped you breathe better, there's nothing, right? You need that, right? But if there's other things like what we have, a more natural way where you don't need a pharmaceutical, just be open to kind of the educational component. That's all we're asking, right? We'll kind of talk you through it all. And that's the conversations that I love, taking somebody who is confused and curious and turning them around to somebody that's like, I want to try this. And there's a friend of my daughter's that came into the store the same way, and they left a customer of ours, and we're very thankful for that. I'm very thankful.
I was reading your blog the
Yeah,
other day about your dad, and you and I both share Father's Day. We miss our dads, and it's kind of a second crappiest day of the year for me. So, I feel your pain. I'm with you on that. Your blog was about your dad used to say, "I'm off like a big ass bird."
yeah. My blog, by the way, is sometimes just a stream of consciousness, as you've kind of
Mhm.
seen there. And I don't know how else to do it besides just be who I am. And it just hit me one day. I don't know what it was. I was thinking about my dad, right? And sometimes, I mean, Mike, you're so great and so eloquent at what you do, but blogging is something that's kind of new to me and whatnot. And I think I got a long way to go. But I just that one phrase just hit me, and I'm like, where did that come from? And I kind of did like an origin story, and I called my brothers up on the phone. I have two brothers, Anthony and Artie. They're great guys. And I'm the middle guy. So anybody who's a psychologist on the phone right now who's watching this will know,
Well,
right?
hang on a sec. I'm the middle child, and you and I turned out kind of okay, right?
Right.
That's our story.
But I talked to him like, we don't know where that came from. I talked to my mom, like, I don't know where it came from, but I just love it. I love the expression. And I feel like my dad's generation, my dad passed away a year ago. So, second Father's Day without him sucks. I mean, no doubt. But he was of that generation where when he was 18, the Korean War started, and he just like signed up, right? Just signed up. And he totally transformed himself into a special forces Marine in the Marine Corps. And you know what? That generation just had such great expressions and just such great um, respect for life. I guess I want to say it basically. So I didn't know where that came from, but I wanted to blog about it.
I
So
thought it was good. Yeah,
the
because
big ass bird thing just came out of nowhere, but I wanted to write about it a little bit.
no, I'm glad you did. I love the stories from the parents as we get older. We're like, yeah, I remember you saying that, but I never could get the
Yeah,
context. So sometimes they didn't really care. They just wanted to get your attention with
yeah,
something.
exactly. Right.
Your store, Trek CBD, is at 1968 South Main Street in Wake Forest. When somebody walks in your store for the first time, what's going to jump out at them?
What's going to jump out at them is number one, if they've been to another CBD store, a lot of the stores put everything behind glass, right? So you can't touch it. Everything in our store is in an open shelf, and you can check it out in our gallery on our website or our Yelp page or whatever it is. But it's purposeful because if people are confused, and like we said before, if they're confused if this is legal or not, we don't want to make it seem like it's a don't touch kind of a scenario. So you can pick up and touch the products. You'll kind of walk into a long table in front of you, where we start off with education, telling about how CBD works with the body itself and what's called the endocannabinoid system. And then we have products for people to try right there. And then if we need a further educational moment, in the back of our store, there's 2 chairs and a couch and a coffee table and a TV on the wall, where we'll sit down with people and have an extended conversation. And we've sat there with some of our customers that said, hey, you know what? They're kind of hobbling into the store, and you can tell their foot's hurting. And I'm like, this might sound weird, but would you like to put some pain cream on that? Like, well, it's on my foot. I'm like, well, come sit over here in the back, sit down. We're not going to judge. Take your shoe off, whatever, rub the pain cream on. We'll talk to you at your level right there on CBD. And by the time they walk out, their foot's feeling better. So that's what's going to feel a little bit different in terms of that. You're going to walk in and you're really going to feel those 3 things come to life: the quality piece, the education, and the value piece, because you're going to see that in the store and how it's designed, how it's laid out, how you experience it. But the real most important thing to me, Mike, is that when you walk through the store, we just believe in good old fashioned customer service. So our store is about, I don't know, it's about 60 feet deep. If I'm seeing you walk out of your car, I'm going to leave behind our transaction counter, meet you at the door. Before COVID, shake your hand, obviously, I mean, not anymore, but do the chicken wing kind of a thing or whatever. But then we're going to get to know you, get to know your name. Why are you here today? And in reverse, when you leave, we're going to walk you back out to the front door. We're going to open the door for you, et cetera, because we want Trek CBD to be an experience, and an experience that goes far beyond CBD, and just hopefully you leave saying, wow, I feel appreciated. I feel valued. And that's what we want, because we know that going forward, and there's been a lot of data on this, is that the retail concepts that are going to survive are the ones that create an experience, not just a place to buy goods and services. So we're going to be passionate about that. And we are looking for employees right now. And our number one criteria is, if you know nothing about CBD, that's okay, right? If you're passionate about people and delivering customer service, we want to talk, because we'll teach you the rest, right? But that's what we're looking for, because that's what we believe in as it
I
is.
love the phrase, you hire attitude and you train skill,
Mm-hmm.
because in the previous lives I've had where I've hired and managed people,
Yep.
I've told them as I got older and longer into this, I just kind of cut to the chase in the interview, because I got
Yep.
tired of the 12 interview questions I said,
Completely.
look, I can't teach you to care.
Yep.
So if you don't care, it's going to take about an hour and a half to show up.
Mike, that's brilliant. If I could add one thing to that, and it's hard to do that, but I mean, it's values, right?
Mhm.
I mean, so if you've got the right value system in place, right,
Yep.
with the right attitude, then you know what? Like I said, I couldn't agree with you more in that statement. I mean, pharmaceutical industry was very technical. A lot of training and certification as needed, because you're representing something that's scheduled by the FDA, right? But at the same time, the ones that did the best were the ones that were passionate about people, right? And could learn the science, right? We can teach you the science, right? But they were passionate about people and helping people. And that's what I'm looking for. And Scott and I are looking for at Trek CBD.
And you guys feel like you're making a difference, aren't you?
I do. You know what? I don't want that to come across as egotistical,
Hmm.
because I mean, but it's our passion is the people. We've been blessed that in about a little less than 6 months, we have almost 1,000 customers in our database. We've got a really strong customer loyalty to that. And you know what? And that's just something that you're humbled by. People trust us every single day to take something to put into their body. We knew from day one that was going to be paramount, and that's why you hear about the quality component of our value proposition, is because if we're going to ask you to put something into your body, there's a lot of crap out there in CBD right now. We're not going to be one of them. Everything is backed by what's called a third-party laboratory analysis. So it's free of impurities. It has the potency it delivers. And that's the ultimate sign of trust, is when someone says, okay, I'm going to take this every single day. It's not topical. It goes into my body. I trust you enough to do that. Okay.
And I think this is one of these industries where you would just ask people just to read a little bit, to understand a little bit more about what it is. Not telling you to walk in the store, but if you feel like that may be something that could solve a problem for you,
Yep.
read up a little bit. So when you walk in, then the things you're explaining to them kind of start falling into place, don't they?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we see both. We see the totally naive who just said, I was driving by your store, going back to the Kanye West thing. I've heard all about this thing. Tell me a little bit about this. Or I know a lot about this. Tell me why like the questions you asked. Tell me why you guys are different. Tell me why I should shop here, versus somewhere else. Because we're not the only store in town. There's more. There's more coming too. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Oh yeah, people see the dollar signs in this industry, don't they?
They do, but you know what? And you know what? If that's what you see here, I'm not going to say you're wrong, and I'm not going to say you're right, but that's not what we saw first, right? We had to see the dollar signs. We're a business, we're not a nonprofit, but we had to be able to say that it goes beyond that, and saying that if the dollars are there, how are we going to differentiate ourselves from everything else out there? And if we do these things right, if we take care of our guests on a daily basis, right? If they really feel like we genuinely care about them, and we do, basically, the dollars will follow. I'm not worried about that. I mean, we'll figure it out, right? Whatever adjustments we have to make the dollars where they need to be, we'll do it. But we're never ever going to take a step back on the why we're there, which is the people. And I will tell you that we have what's called a Pave the Way savings program for those that have paved the way for us. And we believe this in terms of our values strongly. Anybody who's active military, anybody who's a veteran, anybody who's a senior citizen get discounts every single month of up to 25% in our store. And that hurts. That hurts the bottom line. But again, we wouldn't be who we were if we didn't say, you know what, these are the people like my dad and your dad that have paved the way for us. We're going to pay it back to them. Military, first responders, oh my gosh, every single day, they're defending our lives, our freedom. Definitely, right? Veterans, they've already done that. All right, we're going to pay it back. You know what? And it just so happens that we're in a position where we can do that. And that's what we believe in, is paving the way.
Yep, and glad you guys are doing that. If you need some more information, go to Trek, that's TREK, TrekCBD.com.
Correct. .com.
And you can also go, if you live in the Wake Forest area, you can go to 1968 South Main Street. Check it out. Go in with an open mind. I'm not telling you to buy anything. I'm not pushing anything. But if you really believe that it can help you, just go in with an open mind. I think you'll be surprised, because I do know some friends. As I've learned more about it, I've started to listen more to friends of mine that are taking stuff like that, and I hadn't really met anybody that says absolutely didn't work.
Yeah.
So anyways, Nick, we appreciate having you on the show today. Good luck with is this your third career now?
I stopped counting, Mike. I don't know.
Okay.
I just think I'm hoping it's the last. Right?
Well, let's just say your rookie season in the CBD world. How about that?
Right. Yep.
All right. Well, yeah, good luck to you and Scott on the store. We appreciate having you on the show, and we'll see everybody next week on Triangle BNI.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.